If you have felt a different weight in the last few days, if it seems that something invisible is draining your strength, disturbing your mind, and messing everything around, maybe this is not just tiredness. Maybe you are at war, and not just any war, but a spiritual war, one that the eyes do not see, but the soul feels. This video is for you who have been seeking God, doing the right thing, keeping the faith, but even so, face inexplicable pressures, inner pains, and resistances that arise out of nowhere. It may even seem that you are alone, that it is only with you, but it is not. God's chosen face battles that many cannot understand. The truth is that there is a fight happening behind what seems natural. Nothing is by chance. When you draw near to God, the spiritual world reacts. Hell is disturbed. And that is why, many times, life tightens exactly when you decide to walk in faith. Today I want to show you 10 clear signs that you are in this spiritual war. And if you identify with most of them, take a deep breath and stay with me until the end. Because what you will hear here can help you understand what is behind your battles. And even more, how to win them. Let us together reveal what is hidden, because those who understand the war learn to wage war. Your mind has become a battlefield. The first war that the chosen face is inside their own mind, and it is not an exaggeration. The mind becomes a place of confrontation between thoughts of faith and arrows of doubt, fear, and confusion. It is as if something were trying to steal your inner peace all the time. You try to focus, but the restlessness will not let you. This kind of war is not just emotional, it is spiritual. You feel that negative thoughts arise out of nowhere. They are doubts about yourself, fear of the future, a feeling that you will not make it. And as much as you pray, it seems that nothing changes. This is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign that you are at the center of an invisible but real battle. The mind is where the enemy attacks first, because if he manages to shake your confidence, the rest collapses easily. That is why the chosen live days when they are fine on the outside, but inside, their thoughts are at war. Silence on the outside, confusion on the inside. This is one of the clearest signs of spiritual warfare. Many times you wake up already tired, even after sleeping. It seems that the emotional weight does not leave. This is the reflection of nights when the mind did not rest. The war continues even in sleep. Recurring thoughts, worries that do not go away. All of this indicates that something greater is trying to block your advance. The only way to win this battle is to renew the mind with the truth. The Word of God needs to occupy the place of lying thoughts. When doubt comes, declare faith. When fear knocks, confess promises. Do not fight with mental strength. Fight with spiritual weapons. You are not alone. God is with you on this battlefield. Your faith is tested right after moments of victory. Have you noticed that right after a great spiritual achievement, it seems that something tries to extinguish your joy? It is as if the blessing brought with it an invisible weight. This fluctuation is not a coincidence. It is a spiritual test. The enemy cannot stand to see a chosen one growing, so he tries to attack before the fire spreads. After every victory, there is a counterattack. Moses defeated Pharaoh, but he was tested in the desert. Elijah defeated the prophets of Baal, but soon faced the discouragement from Jezebel. Every victory brings with it a new kind of battle, because it takes you to another level. And every new level requires a more mature, firmer, more real faith. When you are tested after winning, it does not mean you made a mistake. It means that heaven is promoting you. The resistance is the confirmation that you are advancing. The enemy does not attack those who are standing still. He attacks those who are growing. Therefore, when the struggle comes right after an achievement. Understand, this is a sign of progress, not of failure. True faith is forged in this process. It is not when everything goes well that it grows. It is when you choose to trust even without understanding. It is when the scenario changes, but your hope does not change with it. It is in that place that spiritual character is formed, and it is there that God sees who is ready for more. So, the next time discouragement tries to hit you right after a victory, remember, it is not the end. It is just the second round. Stay firm. The same God who gave you the past victory will sustain you in this new battle. The test is the seal of the conquest. Sleep has become a field of oppression. One of the most common signs of spiritual warfare is disturbance during sleep. Nightmares, insomnia, a feeling of spiritual heaviness, or tiredness upon waking. All these symptoms show that there is a battle happening while you sleep. The body rests, but the spirit remains at war. That is why many chosen ones wake up exhausted without understanding why. The enemy knows that sleep is the moment when the body is restored and the spirit is strengthened. Therefore, he tries to steal rest. It is in sleep that God speaks in dreams, reveals paths, and ministers peace. And the enemy does the opposite. He sows fear, confusion, and anguish. He wants you to start the day tired, emotionally drained, and spiritually weakened. But understand, if he attacks your sleep, it is because there is something powerful in you. The rest of the chosen is dangerous to hell. When you rest in God, you win battles without fighting. That is why the enemy tries to keep you awake, anxious, worried, overthinking. He wants to steal your peace to block your spiritual strength. Therefore, before sleeping, give God your mind and your heart. Pray, asking for spiritual covering. Declare that your bed is an altar of sacred rest. Use the word as a shield. Put on a worship song. Declare Psalm 91. When you sleep under God's presence, the enemy loses access. Sleep becomes a place of victory. If your rest has been attacked, do not accept it as normal. You were not called to sleep in fear. You are called to rest in peace. And God's peace is a spiritual weapon. Relationships are being stirred. The chosen feel this strongly. People start to drift away. Connections break. Old friendships lose their meaning. It is painful, but it is necessary. When God is preparing you for something greater, He needs to reorganize who walks with you. Not everyone who started with you has the maturity to remain by your side in the new season. This separation is not punishment. It is protection. God sees things you do not see, hears conversations you do not hear, and perceives hidden intentions that your heart does not notice. So, He removes people silently. Sometimes you feel rejected, but in fact you are being preserved. What seems like loss is actually deliverance. The enemy also knows the power of connections. Therefore, he tries to infiltrate the wrong people, draining relationships, bonds that sap your energy. He uses people to distract you and take you off focus. That is why when God begins a new cycle in your life, He first cleans the environment around you, and that cleansing hurts. But after the process passes, you understand. What left needed to leave. What stayed is root, and what is coming is a divine alliance. God does not remove to leave you alone, but to make room for those who will propel you spiritually. He does not want you to walk with those who only like you, but with those who believe in your purpose. So if you are in a time of solitude, do not complain. It is the pruning before the fruiting. Silence is preparation. Financial attacks in moments of faithfulness. There is a reality that many live but cannot name. Every time a chosen one decides to be faithful to God in finances, something strange happens. The salary that was enough before now seems to disappear. Unexpected bills arise, urgent problems, sudden losses. It seems that the more you give, the tighter it gets. This has a name: spiritual warfare. It is not a coincidence. Money carries a spiritual weight. It has the power to reveal intentions, open paths, sustain purposes. That is why when you decide to consecrate your resources to God, whether with tithes, offerings, or helping someone, the spiritual world moves. Heaven moves, but hell also reacts. And it reacts by trying to cut off your source. The enemy is not concerned with your money itself, but he fears what you can do with it. A chosen one who prospers can free others, finance missions, help those in need, build something that transforms lives. This bothers the darkness. And that is why, many times, the attacks arise exactly after an act of faith. It is common to feel that right after an offering or a generous gesture, a crisis comes. The enemy tries to make you believe that you were foolish. He tries to plant fear. What if it is lacking tomorrow? And if you need it and do not have it? But that fear does not come from God. It is an attempt to interrupt your faithfulness. These moments of sudden scarcity have a clear purpose: to make you doubt. To doubt whether it is worth being faithful. To doubt whether God is seeing. To doubt whether the giving made sense. But this resistance is not a sign of error. On the contrary, it is a sign that your giving was so serious that it affected the spiritual world. Every time you plant, something begins to grow. But the enemy tries to prevent the seed from becoming fruit. He acts quickly to discourage you so that you stop sowing. But those who remain firm at that moment, even without seeing immediate results, show spiritual maturity. And that maturity attracts true provision. God is not blind. He sees faithfulness even when it is silent. He honors every act of trust, especially when it comes from little, from scarcity, from renunciation. And when he decides to release, provision comes in the way that only he can do. At the right time, in the right way, and with a greater purpose. These financial attacks do not mean that God has abandoned you. They are, in fact, a confirmation that you are walking in strategic spiritual territory. Neutral people do not suffer this kind of opposition. But those who are positioned in the kingdom become targets because they represent a real risk to the enemy system of scarcity. Therefore, continue. Your faithfulness is building something eternal. God is not only sustaining you, he is shaping you to manage much more. The enemy only tries to stop what he knows can blossom. And when you remain even under pressure, heaven opens. And what God releases, no one can contain. Discouragement appears when you are about to grow. One of the most subtle tactics of spiritual warfare is the sudden discouragement that shows up when something good is about to happen. It is that sadness without explanation, that desire to give up out of nowhere, that apathy that arrives just when things were starting to get better. This is not just tiredness, it is spiritual resistance. The enemy works with timing. He knows how to identify moments of advance, and exactly when you are about to take an important step, be it a decision, a surrender, a restart, he launches an arrow of discouragement. There is no logic, only weight. The body gets tired, the mind freezes, and the heart loses motivation. This kind of attack is not uncommon in the Bible. Prophets, kings, and apostles faced it. Elijah, after a great spiritual feat, asked for death. Paul, at many moments, wrote with words of weight and inner struggles. Discouragement comes not because you are weak, but because you are advancing. The enemy's greatest goal is to interrupt processes before they bear fruit. He knows that if you continue, something will change. So he releases sadness, drains your emotional energy, and tries to make you stop. Because if you stop now, he knows you will be just a few steps from a transformation. Therefore, Learn to recognize this kind of struggle. When discouragement comes out of nowhere, ask yourself, what was I about to do? What was God moving? What was the next step? Many times, the simple realization that this is an attack is enough to overcome this barrier. You are not discouraged because you are wrong. You are being resisted because you are right. It is the sign that your growth is bothering. Stay alert. Discouragement is often the last attack before the turning point. Isolation seems more comfortable. In times of spiritual warfare, the chosen go through periods when isolation seems easier than fellowship. That desire comes to withdraw from everyone, not answer messages, not participate in anything. But this impulse does not always come from God. Sometimes it is a strategy of the enemy to weaken you in silence. God does, yes, set us apart for times. Moments of fasting, prayer, consecration. But there is a difference between spiritual retreat and emotional isolation. In retreat, there is growth. In isolation, there is wear. And this line is very subtle. The enemy tries to convince you that being alone is safer, when in fact it makes you vulnerable. Isolation seems to protect, but it hides traps. When we are alone too much, thoughts become more intense, doubts increase, motivation decreases. Without exchange, without fellowship, without counsel, the mind becomes open territory for all kinds of spiritual attack. The devil knows this. He wants to pull you away from everything that strengthens you. Jesus himself, in the most difficult moments, called friends to keep watch with him. It was not out of weakness, it was out of wisdom. He knew there are wars we do not face alone. And when the disciples slept, he felt the weight of abandonment. Isolation may even seem comfortable, but it is not sustainable. There is healing in fellowship. There is strength in connection. Even if no one understands what you are living, just being among the right people already helps keep your faith alive. If the enemy manages to keep you alone for too long, he will manage to weaken you little by little. Therefore, when you feel like withdrawing from everything, pray first. Ask God, is this a time of separation or is it a trap of isolation? The answer will make all the difference. You feel a strange resistance in prayer. Prayer should be the place of relief, fellowship, and strength. But for many chosen ones, it becomes a field of resistance. It is not for lack of faith, but because there is an active battle happening while you try to connect with God. When praying becomes difficult for no apparent reason, it is a sign that something greater is trying to prevent your advance. It is in these moments that the mind seems scattered, the body tired, and the soul restless. You begin to pray and suddenly lose yourself in random thoughts, in worries, or you simply feel a blockage in the spirit. The connection does not seem to flow. The truth is that there is an opposing force trying to prevent your prayer from happening with sincerity and depth. This resistance is not uncommon among the chosen, precisely because the enemy understands the power that exists in prayer. When you pray, you move the spiritual world. Doors open, chains fall, answers arrive. Therefore, when he cannot prevent your faith, he tries to silence your prayer. Because without prayer, the fire of faith begins to weaken. Many times this fight is not limited to the moment of prayer. It begins beforehand. A distraction arises, the phone rings, someone calls. A thought comes of, I will leave it for later. The war has already begun before you even bend your knees. Spiritual resistance is subtle but effective. And if you do not notice it, it wins by wearing you out. Attacks on your identity and purpose. Among all the battles that the chosen face, one of the most subtle and dangerous is against their identity. This war begins silently, with small doubts. Am I really called? Why does it not happen with me? Maybe I do not have what it takes. Over time, these thoughts become constant voices that undermine your confidence. The enemy's intention is not just to make you feel bad, but to confuse your essence. Because if he manages to pull you away from your identity in God, he stalls your purpose. He does not need to destroy your abilities or prevent your opportunities. It is enough to convince you that you are not capable, not worthy, or not really called. This war intensifies, especially after important spiritual moments. You pray, receive a word, feel God's presence, and soon after the crisis comes, comparison with other people arises, the feeling of inadequacy, the sensation that you are not ready. This is an emotional and spiritual trap to paralyze your steps. David was anointed king, but then spent years fleeing, hiding, facing situations that contradicted the promise. Joseph had grand dreams, but faced rejection, slavery, and prison. Whenever there is a high purpose, there is deep resistance. And this resistance targets identity, because it is the foundation of everything you build in the kingdom. You begin to see yourself with distorted eyes, losing clarity about who you are. And when that happens, faith weakens, decisions become insecure, and steps get stuck. The attack on identity is the most strategic because it destabilizes everything else. And that is why it is so frequent among the chosen. Spiritual signs in sequence, as if the world were reacting. Many chosen ones notice something curious. Negative events seem to come in series. It is not just one thing. It is a domino effect. Doors close, people pull away, the atmosphere gets heavy, tiredness increases. It seems that everything is being shaken at the same time. This kind of situation is not just coincidence. It is a clear sign of spiritual movement. This sequence of pressures, obstacles, and frustrations points to something greater. A spiritual transition. The spiritual world moves before the natural. And when heaven begins to release something new over your life, hell reacts. It tries to block, delay, confuse, steal your energy, and distract you from what is coming. These movements are like symptoms of spiritual childbirth. When a new season is about to be born, there are pains, pressure, discomfort. Things that were stable begin to collapse. Connections break, unexpected situations occur. But all of this is announcing that something new is about to be released. Only to receive the new, the old needs to be shaken. At that moment, the great challenge is to maintain discernment. Because those who look only with natural eyes think they are being attacked, punished, or abandoned. But those who look with spiritual eyes perceive. This is a process of separation, cleansing, and repositioning. God is moving everything to align you with purpose. The secret is not to interpret chaos as the end, but as transition. Not every door that closes is a loss. Not every person who leaves your life is betrayal. Many times, it is God removing what cannot accompany you to the next level. And as difficult as it is, trusting this process is essential to cross the storm. If you have come this far, you have already understood that the battles you face are not common. It is not about bad luck, coincidence, or just difficult phases. They are clear signs that you are in a spiritual war, silent but real. A war that rises because there is something inside you that threatens the darkness. The chosen are not persecuted by chance. They carry promises, have marked spiritual destinies, and God has set them apart for great things. And that is precisely why the enemy invests heavily, because he knows that if you remain firm, your life will create impact, will set others free, will fulfill a purpose that goes beyond you. This war you face has a name, has an origin, and has a purpose. It tries to reach your mind, your faith, your emotions, your connections, and even your identity. But do not be mistaken. This is not a sign of weakness. On the contrary, it is a sign that you carry something too precious to go unnoticed. Now that you know the signs, it is time to learn to resist. Not with fear, but with awareness. Not with despair, but with faith. The war will not stop, but you can become stronger. You can mature, grow spiritually, and discover that even when you feel on the ground, you are still advancing. God never promised a life without battles. But He promised presence. He promised sustenance. He promised that no weapon formed against you would prosper. And it is in this promise that you need to stand firm. Even when you are tired, even when everything seems dark, continue. Because heaven's victory has already been released, and it will manifest at the right time. You are not at war because you did something wrong. You are at war because you are on the right path. And as silent as it may seem, this battle is building within you something eternal. God is forging resilience, discernment, authority, and a spirit that does not bow under pressure. So breathe, adjust your armor, and continue. Because those who remain, reap. Those who resist, win. And those who understand they are chosen, do not retreat.